Glider 85 Abnormal and Emergency Procedures. We're going to explore the critical topic of primary flight control systems and potential malfunctions you might encounter while soaring through the skies. Now, the failure of any primary flight control system is a serious safety concern. One common cause? Incomplete assembly of the glider before takeoff. To avoid this, follow a written checklist diligently, inspect every connection thoroughly, and don't let interruptions disrupt your assembly process. Assume that every connection is suspect and test until you're certain everything is ready for flight. Let's talk about elevator malfunctions. If your elevator control fails, it's a major issue. Causes range from improper assembly to foreign objects interfering with the control circuit. The key here is prevention. Remove control locks, ensure proper connections, and perform a positive control check. If you notice an elevator issue during takeoff, release the tow line and use the brakes to stop as soon as possible. If it happens after takeoff, you've got some tough decisions to make. If close to the ground, release the tow line. If climbing, experiment with other controls to maintain control. Moving on to aileron malfunctions. Again, improper connections or control locks left on are common culprits. If one aileron fails, use the other to maintain control. It might be a bit challenging, especially at lower speeds, but keep your airspeed safe. If a parachute is available and things get dicey, consider bailing out from a safe altitude. Rudder malfunctions are extremely rare, mainly because removing the rudder is not a routine part of glider assembly. But if it does happen, and you suspect a control lock or interference, you might still control airspeed and bank attitude. During rollout or landing, you can use wingtip grounding to gain some directional control. Watch out for loose items in the cockpit. Water bottles, cameras, and the like can interfere with controls. So, make sure everything is stowed securely before takeoff. Let's explore secondary flight control systems, including the elevator trim system, wing flaps, and spoilers, dive brakes. These are critical components, just like primary controls, and any issues can pose serious safety risks. Next, elevator trim malfunctions. Compensating for a faulty trim system is usually straightforward. Apply pressure on the control stick to maintain the desired pitch attitude and safely conclude the flight. Remember to inspect and repair the trim system before your next flight. Now, let's talk about spoiler, dive brake malfunctions. These issues can stem from rigging errors, environmental factors, or mechanical failures. Rigging errors, often a result of interruptions during assembly, can lead to spoilers, dive brakes deploying asymmetrically or not retracting. This is hazardous as it can cause launch emergencies, tow failures, and compromised flight safety. Environmental factors like low temperatures or icing during high-altitude flights can also impact spoiler, dive brake operation. In such conditions, contraction or binding may occur, affecting the deployment of these control surfaces. On the flip side, high temperatures can lead to uneven expansion, causing the spoilers, dive brakes to bind in the closed position, especially when parked in direct sunlight. Mechanical failures can result in asymmetrical spoiler or dive brake extension, where one deploys while the other fails to retract. This situation can lead to yaw and roll tendencies, requiring aileron and rudder input to counteract them. To prevent stalling or spinning, maintain a safe margin above stall airspeed. If faced with an asymmetrical spoiler, dive brake extension due to mechanical failure, a prudent decision is to deploy the other spoiler, dive brake to restore symmetry. While this makes controlling the glider easier, keep in mind that gliding range is reduced due to increased drag. Despite the potential challenges, opting for a controlled landing, even in less than ideal terrain, is always a safer choice than risking a stall or spin. Imagine you're in the middle of a glider tow, and suddenly the tow hook malfunctions. It's a critical moment, and towline release might happen unexpectedly or not at all. Pilots need to be ready to abort any towed launch, whether it's a ground or aerotow. Anticipate the possibility of uncommanded towline release before each launch, assess the conditions, and have an emergency plan in place. If the towline refuses to release on command, try multiple release attempts under varying towline tension. If all else fails, alert the tow pilot and follow the emergency procedures outlined in the glider's manual. Now, oxygen system malfunctions at high altitudes can be life-threatening. If there's even a suspicion of an oxygen system failure, the immediate response is to descend to an altitude where supplemental oxygen isn't crucial. Oxygen deprivation can trick you into a sense of well-being, but don't be fooled. Descend, breathe normally, and take time at lower altitudes to restore critical oxygen levels. It's vital to avoid hyperventilation during this process. Only then should you think about attempting an approach and landing. Moving on to the drogue chute, a useful tool during the approach, but it has its challenges. Imagine it accidentally deploys during launch. You might need to jettison it to maintain climb performance. During the approach, if it fails to deploy, controlled maneuvers might help. But if it doesn't work, be ready to jettison it immediately, especially if it unexpectedly deploys later in the approach. Now, let's talk about self-launching gliders, equipped with complex systems for powered flight. From fuel tanks to engine controls, these gliders demand thorough knowledge of their manuals. If the engine fails during takeoff or climb, the priority is to maintain flying airspeed and find a suitable landing area. Understanding emergency procedures is crucial. Finally, consider the worst-case scenario, an in-flight fire. Reduce throttle, shut off fuel valves, kill the engine ignition, land immediately, and get out of the glider. Modern gliders made of composite materials can produce toxic fumes, so be prepared to jettison the canopy for breathable air and a quick exit. When it comes to soaring flights, having the right emergency equipment and survival gear is non-negotiable for ensuring safety in the skies. But what exactly do you need? Well, checklists are your best friend here. They help you gather all the necessary supplies in an organized manner. And don't forget about maintaining that body temperature. Now, let's talk about communication. In the air, it can be electronic, visual, or audible. Radios, phones, and cell phones cover the electronic side. Visual methods include signal mirrors, flashlights, and even parachute canopy displays. Shouting might work but has limited range. That's where a good whistle comes in handy. Remember, you might need coin, cash, or credit cards for payphones, and don't forget those charged batteries for your devices. Navigation is key during flights, and aviation charts play a crucial role. For off-airport landings, sectional charts are your best bet. And having local road maps on hand makes life easier for giving directions to your ground crew. GPS coordinates are a bonus if your crew is equipped. Make sure it suits the environment you're flying in. Stowing everything properly is not just about keeping the glider organized, it's about securing items to protect occupants and ensure the integrity of flight controls. Parachutes need to be clean, dry, and regularly inspected and repacked within the allowable time frame. And speaking of altitude, remember oxygen. If there's even a hint of a failure in the system, descend immediately. Don't let the first signs of oxygen deprivation fool you. Descend, breathe normally, and recover before attempting an approach and landing. Lastly, accident prevention is everyone's responsibility. The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, generates reports on soaring accidents, and it's crucial for pilots to study them. Learn from the past, understand the causes, and, most importantly, grasp how these incidents could have been prevented. The Soaring Safety Foundation is an excellent resource for pilots to educate themselves on glider safety, providing lessons learned, information, and online safety learning. So, stay informed, stay safe, and soar high. If you click like and subscribe and leave a comment, we will provide a coupon for a free PDF download, one of 9 ebooks. However, each individual can only download up to 1 out of 9 ebooks for free.